Hello, I'm Richard Ramseyer. I'm a member of the Licking County Fly Fishing Club, and this is Steve Wiersma. We're going to talk a little bit about our fly fishing club today, and we're not wearing masks because of the people that are hearing impaired may have a problem understanding us. So I hope that we can speak clearly enough as we are. So we'll get on with this. I said Licking County. I meant Land of Legend Fly Fishing Club. This club was formed by 3 individuals years ago that came back from a fly fishing meeting in Columbus, and they thought, well, maybe there are people here in Newark that would like to do this also, so they put an advertisement in the paper, and those two, I know 2 of the 3 members. One was Dale Miller, and the other was Gene Snelling. They're gone now. But we do have a member in our club that's over 90 years old, so it's something for the youth or for the aged.
We both fall into that category, unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on what it is.
So, a little bit about our club. We meet 3 times a month on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Mondays of the month. We have a business meeting on the first meeting, which is the second Monday. The second meeting is fly tying meeting, and the third meeting is rod building. Now, in the summertime, we might go away from the rod building because that's mostly done indoors, of course. And we have a very generous person, George Fackler, that has let us use his 4-acre pond to meet there and demonstrate fly fishing to those that need any instructions. And our club helps to stock the pond, and we do catch and release only from this pond so that we don't eliminate the number of fish in the pond, and we use barbless hooks so the fish are not harmed. So if they get caught more than once, it's not going to bother them. So that being said, what we're going to do today is we're going to demonstrate fly tying to you. Steve's going to start off by showing a fly tie, and he's going to show you the fly to begin with and then show you the finished product after he gets done. And I'm going to follow up with 2 other flies. Steve, you want to add anything to that? No,
but looking back on Dave Miller, who just passed recently, I have one of his fly rods that he made, and it is just a superior rod. He was an excellent fly rod builder. When he passed away, he had something like 80-some fly rods at his house.
I think even more than that.
Possibly. That's what I think they stopped counting at 80. But
yeah.
It is a superior rod. It's easy to fish. It's one I like to use quite a bit. Today, what I'm going to tie is a caddis nymph. It's a very simple tie and very quickly done. The idea that, in my case, I'd like to tie, I need a volume of ties because mine are so realistic that they end up diving under rocks in the water and getting caught on, flying up in the trees and getting caught in the trees.
That brings up a subject, Steve. I want to point out that fly fishing is a skill game. Like golf is a skill game. You never get perfect at golf. You never get perfect at fly fishing. So it is a skill game. And part of the things that we do in our club is teach people how to tie flies and also how to fish for the fish. But the other thing is public service. We go out and attend meetings like Pheasants Forever, the county fairs. We go to the Boy Scouts and show them how to tie flies and how to use a fly rod and that sort of thing. And I think at one point we had almost 20 different places we went in per year.
Yes.
So yes. We have members in our club that volunteer their time to do this and hopefully to educate people. Because there's a lot of people who say, I'd like to learn how to do that. So we're there for them if they want to. And our club is an easy club to get into. I've never known anybody be blackballed.
I was close.
However, what is it, $30 a year for a membership?
$25 for a family membership, I believe.
Okay. No, I think it's 30. Yeah.
30? Okay.
Yeah. But anyhow, that gives us a little bit of money to work with, and we have had some raffles from time to time, so we have some money, and we've made some donations to Casting for Recovery, which is a organization that takes women on a weekend fly fishing, and then Real Recovery and these women have had breast cancer or are recovering or have it or are recovering from it, and the Real Recovery is for men with any type of cancer, and that's just a weekend, a getaway to get these people's mind off of themselves and do something different, and suit them up in the fly fishing gear and put them in the water, and they all have attendants. They have somebody, a ghillie there to help them, but it's a lot of fun.
It is.
So
well, I know what I really enjoy doing. Wounded warriors that come over from Columbus.
yes, we do that. That's another one.
It's very nice morning. You get to talk to some people, and they learn how to fly fish, and it's just fun to support people who have done a service to America.
Yeah. The other thing about our club is you're welcome to come and observe what we do, and there's no charge for it or anything like that, but we welcome visitors, and then if you think you'd like to be a member. Our club actually has a cabinet here at Heritage Hall where we have stored all kinds of fly fishing materials, and those are for the use of the members. They can just go there anytime they want to, and they don't have to buy some of these expensive things like a cape here, which is can cost up to $100. Our club will buy those. That's an extreme, but that is the truth. Someone costs that much, but they can go get those, and just so they don't overdo it, they can have as many as they want.
Yes.
So,
yep.
All right. I think we can go ahead and start with your fly, Steve, and
Sure. I will start tie the simple caddis and nymph. Caddis flies are in all types of water: ponds, lakes, streams, just any kind of impoundment. They are, in fact, a bioindicator. If you have caddis fly in your pond, or if you have caddis fly in your streams, it's a sign that the water is not polluted. So they watch the caddis fly population. In my reading, preparing for this, I think they identified 14,500 different types of caddis.
is that right?
Yeah, and they don't feel they've got them all. They suggest that there's 100,000 different.
You missed out on this, but we went to the Soil and Water here in Licking County. Had a lady that took us to the North Fork of the Licking River right here in town, and we went in the river with nets, small little nets, and turned over stones, and we had a number of caddis larvae in there, which is an indication that the North Fork of the Licking River is in good shape.
That's true. That's true. It's a nice stream to fish too. We've been up there on outings a couple times. One of the members fishes it enough times that he knows every fish by name, intimately. And I've seen it. He just has he has one fish in particular that he had caught several years in a row, and he has pictures of them over the season. I guess he misses them now. So anyway, going ahead, bad humor on my part. I have to apologize for that. But this caddis fly is a small. I use it quite a bit. The caddis fly, because there are so many, are just really identified by color. They talk about green caddis and brown caddis and tan caddis and black caddis. Like I say, there's any number of them.
There's different kinds of flies as far as
Yes.
where their habitat is, and
This is
really
the
tying
caddis
a wet fly.
nymph. Yes, this is a wet fly. It's subsurface. You fish it down towards the bottom or in the water column of the stream, where fish get 90% of their food. Right. And so you're fishing hopefully where the fish are.
But the more exciting part about it is having the surface fly, and that's
yes,
because you can see the fish come up and get it.
Oh, it's a thrill when they have the fly that you're going to tie. You tie a caddis dry fly that'll floats on the surface, and it's a thrill to use a rod you may have built, fishing a fly you've built, and seeing that fish come up and attack that fly.
That's a good accomplishment.
That really is. It's a thrill.
And I might point out that wet fly that you're going to be tying is sometimes tied to another fly, which is a dry fly. So you have a dry fly and a wet fly in the same deal. The problem with that is they sometimes get tangled up with each other.
Oh, no. Like I said, it's a nice fly. One of the things that we use for this, the dubbing we use is a sparkle dubbing, and it comes in various shades and colors, and you can see it here, life cycle. And it's because the caddisfly is, some of them live in cocoons at the bottom of the stream, and they bring in sticks and stones and attach them to it. And then when they cut through the cocoon to release and go to swim to the surface, or actually float to the surface, parts of that case float up with them, give them displacement to float to the top of the surface. And of course, as they float up, then they become targets for smallmouth bass, forage fish, trout, all kinds of, any fish that eats invertebrates. So that's the reason you'll see this one has sparkle in it. Like I say, it's a very simple fly. You really just tie in the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And it's a quick tie. It only takes a couple of minutes. And I'm going to tie it today on a curved nymph hook, which we will have pictures of that. This is a size 12 curved and nymph hook. Before we start, we probably need to discuss the different types of hooks we use. This one is
crush
curved.
the barb down.
Hooks are all the same as far as they've got an eye for tying on
fish.
your tip of material. Shank, sometimes it's curved, sometimes it's straight. We've got the bend in the hook, and of course the barb in the hook, which is barb and the point.
And the size of the hooks.
And the size of the hooks.
The sky's the limit, really.
Yes.
As far as size, it goes way up there, but what's the smallest hook that you know of?
Oh, they've claimed that there's size 40 out there.
Oh, no.
Which is, flies are inversely related to the number. The larger the number, the smaller the fly. Mm-hmm. And John Grisham talks about in his books a size 40 fly, which I think would be about the head of a pin.
It's almost ridiculous.
It is. Now, the smallest one I can get down to is the smallest one I've ever tied is a size 24.
Okay.
And that's small, and I've got to.
You got good eyes then.
Well, I use the cheaters. But anyway.
All right, go for it.
Okay. I'm using green thread today because it was conveniently already in my bobbin. What you do is you take a couple wraps forward, starting about 1/3 of the way of the 1/3 of the length of the shank, back from the eye. You take a couple wraps forward, and then you start back down the hook towards the bend. You can unwind your thread a little bit, making it flatter by spinning it counterclockwise. And you want to put on touching wraps, one wrap of thread against the other, all the way back to about where the bend becomes more pronounced on this hook. And I've misplaced my scissors.
Here you go.
Thank you. We'll clip off the tag end, and now I'm going to put some dubbing on the thread. Now, Kelly Gallup of Montana, a well-known author and fly tyer and owner of a fly shop, the Slide In Fly Shop in Montana, says the amount of dubbing you use is very small. If you can throw it up in the air and it floats, that's sufficient dubbing. As I mentioned earlier, this has got some sparkle. It's a sparkle built into it, and it's reflective because when the caddis cuts out of its cocoon and floats to the surface, some of the cocoon aids in the floating to the surface. Now I'm going to wrap at the back by the curve of the hook and wrapping forward to where I started with my thread. And just slightly ahead, because I want this to be about 2/3 of the length of the shank. Now I'm going to simply tie in a black or a darker thread, a darker dubbing, and because the thorax of a fly is darker than the abdomen. And it's simply taking the dubbing and spinning it around the thread. And you spin it around lightly because it wants to look a little shaggy. You slide it down into place and you wrap forward again. And it wants to be loose, and it wants to be larger than the abdomen. And when you get to the end, you take a couple finishing wraps around the just back of the eye of the thread, eye of the hook, and you take your whip finisher, put the hook over it, bring it back in a figure 4, and 2 wraps, maybe 3 wraps, and that creates your head to the fly. You pull it tight, and there is a caddis nymph. It takes, like I said, it probably takes longer to discuss it and film it here than what you do in practice. This is what some people refer to as a box builder. They'll tie 10, 12 in 20, 30 minutes, maybe shift to another color, tie another, and their box will be full when they need them on the stream. So we want to introduce your fly now, your 2 flies that you're going to tie.
Okay, the 2 flies I'm going to tie, one is the caddis fly, and that's this fly right here. And then the other one is a woolly booger, and that's right here. And the caddis, as Steve mentioned, is a dry fly, and the woolly booger, which is probably the most popular fly out there. It works for anything practically, but that is a wet fly, and it's actually classified as a streamer, which is supposed to simulate a crawfish, a minnow, leech, anything. It's just the action of it is something that entices the fish to say, this looks pretty interesting, I think I'll eat it.
That's right, that's right. You want to, it's an attractor, if you will.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very good fly. Now, the other thing about it is like I say, the dry flies in particular need to float on the surface, and you'll be using materials. The deer hair is hollow.
Deer hair is hollow.
And we'll dip way back into our physics classes, and it's a demonstration of the displacement, the idea that you're displacing a greater weight of water than you are the fly itself.
You're depending on surface tension.
You're depending on surface tension to support that on the
Well, we can help
top.
that out too. We can put some silicone on that fly
Yep.
if it gets too sogged up.
Yep,
It's too soggy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Whereas in the case of the streamer, it's going to be fished subsurface, and you'll maybe adding weight to it to actually take it down to the surface.
I'll do that today, yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right.
The fly I'm going to demonstrate this morning as far as a dry fly is the caddis fly, the adult caddis fly, and this is a searching fly which is used to tell if there's any fish in the area or so forth, and it's just a common, probably one of the most popular flies going. This fly is made up of, if you see the little fibers down here at the bottom, those are from a feather, which you'll see when I tie a fly. That's supposed to simulate the legs of the fly. Then wrapped around the hook itself is dubbing, which is the body of the thorax, and the top is deer hair, which deer hair is hollow, so it floats, and sometimes it'll get wet enough that it won't float anymore, and then you have to put a silicone product on there to help it to float. But the deer hair is supposed to simulate the wings of a fly, and out on the water, it makes it very visible for you to see, and for hopefully the fish to see. Of course, and the head of it is here, which is also deer hair, and it's a very effective fly. The other fly that I'm going to tie is a wet fly, and I'll put it over here for you to see. And this is called a woolly booger. Now the woolly booger is a wet fly, meaning that it goes underneath the surface of the water and is dragged through the surface of the water. And it's probably the most popular fly that's ever been tied. It's a fairly easy tie, and you can tie it in many different ways. But what this fly consists of is marabou, which is actually this green fluffy stuff here. That's actually a turkey feather, part of the end of a turkey feather, which I'll show you when we do tie these flies. I've got some sparkle yarn in here. It's not a yarn, but it's a sparkly material to kind of make it more attractive to the fish that can see it. The fly is actually, the shank of the fly, which is the long part of the hook, is first covered with a chenille, which is simulating the body of the fly, and then there's a feather wrapped around that which is supposed to simulate the legs. And this fly actually dragging through the water, it's called a streamer. When it's dragged through the water, it will simulate a fish, perhaps a gray fish, a sculpin, which is a type of fish, maybe a leech. It's just an all-around fly that people use it for exploring. They use it for just in any situation. There's something about this fly that fish find attractive. And you also notice on the front of this fly, I've got a brass bead, which adds to the weight of the fly. Also have some lead wrapped around or it's tungsten wire wrapped around the shank of the hook, which adds to weight, and so it gets down a little bit farther. So that's the woolly booger. I'm going to show you the materials that we use for tying the caddisfly and the woolly booger, and Steve's already mentioned the materials that he used. First of all, I'm going to use a product called marabou, and this is actually a turkey feather. It's actually one of the secondary feathers underneath the main feathers, which gives them their warmth, and this will be the tail on the fly. Then I'm going to use a product called chenille, and this is a yarn. And this particular yarn has a core in it, which is a white thread that the chenille is wrapped around, and there are different grades of this. We buy a special grade for fly tying. Then, I also mentioned I'm going to put some wire around the fly, that sort of thing. That's for the woolly booger. The feathers, I think, is something that's very interesting about this. This actually comes from a special bird, a chicken, but they are raised. How many of you have ever seen chickens have feathers this long? Those feathers are specially made. They breed these chickens to have these feathers, and it's a very specialized thing and a very closely kept secret. And there's only a couple people in the United States that actually make these saddles and capes. That's what they're called. The saddle is on the back of the chicken, and the cape is the neck. But see, they're very fine and very long, and also they breed them for the feathers to be stiff. He said that the feather merchants years ago, by the way, fly tying goes back like 2,000 years or more. We don't know for sure, but in the days of the ladies with the big hats and so forth, they would have feather merchants that would come through the United States with feathers that came from India. And the way they would test these feathers, whether they liked them or not, had to be for their appearance, their color, and so forth, but they also had to be stiff as far as the barbules. That's the secondary feather on it. And the way they would check it, they'd push it against their lips. That was for the feather tires. It wasn't for the ladies' hats, but it's for the fly tires. They press it against the lips because you want those feathers to have a little rigidity and that sort of thing to them. The other thing we're using for these flies is the deer hair, and we have different kinds of deer hair here. We have orange deer hair, we have pink deer hair, we have yellow deer hair, and normal deer hair. So we have different colors of deer in this area.
No, you want to point out that those are dyed. We don't actually have purple and orange deer here in Lincoln County.
That's right. Actually, this is deer hair. This is actually elk hair. So I think that covers the major portions. Is there anything else here that I've missed, Steve? I don't think so.
Lead wire and the hook
I've
size.
got everything to go. The fly I'm going to be tying this morning is the caddisfly. And the hook that I'm using is a standard hook, meaning that this is the normal length of a hook. And they come in different lengths, 1X, 2X, 3X, so forth. This is a standard one. This is a size 12 hook. This is the smallest hook, the largest hook that you should tie this fly with, although in our club we will oftentimes use a little bit bigger hook because some of our tires are a little shaky, their eyesight isn't that good, and it's easier for them to use a large hook. I'm going to place this thread right behind the eye and cross it several times, and then wrap it to the back of the hook. There's different ways of doing this, but this seems to be the simplest way to me. And you get a nice thread base here which locks the thread against the shank of the hook. Then I've pre-selected a feather for this fly, and we don't use this fluffy stuff on the feather because it doesn't stick out very well, but we will tie the feather on the back of the hook, and then as you'll see later on, I'll just wrap it up the hook, and that's called palmering. So we've got that out of the way. Now we're going to put a little dubbing wax on the thread because my fingers don't have the moisture in them that some people's do, and that helps to get the dubbing material. The dubbing material is made out of fur from animals. Rabbits oftentimes used. There's a lot of synthetics. Steve showed the sparkle yarn that he was using. So there's a lot of different things they can make it out of, but it's actually fine fibers that you can wrap around the hook. Now what I'm going to do is try and make this wrapping so that it's kind of sharp, cigar shaped, so the front of it's a little bit larger than the back, which is where the insect is. Okay, we're about where we need to be there. So now the next step is I'm going to take this feather and palmer it forward. Now what I have to do is I have to be very careful that I keep this feather in proper position, and also that I don't let go of it, because if I let go of it, we're going back to square one. But you can see these fibers are sticking out, and that's going to give the body of the fly appearance of legs, and also help to hold the deer hair in proper position too. So wrap it a couple of times here, and that secures the feather, and I'm done with it. So I clip off the rest of it.
A lot of people, when they first start tying or palmering a hackle in, will use what's called a hackle pliers, and it makes it a little bit easier initially to get the hackle in place. As you become more experienced, the hackle pliers kind of go to the side.
And what I'm doing is I'm taking some elk hair. This is called an elk hair caddis. Taking some elk hair, and clipping it off, and then I'm going to have to be careful with this deer hair because there's a lot of under hair in here. So I have to use a comb and comb that fur out. You can see there that came out there, and still that here yet. And so then what I'm going to do is put this in what we call a deer hair stacker. You can see that all the different fibers are different lengths. We put it in a stacker. Hammer it down there a few times. Wasn't supposed to do this. It'll work. And you can see how these ends of these elk hair have pretty much lined up. So then I'm going to pinch down. This is a very important part of it. You have to be able to hold on to this and not let go. And I'm going to measure this. I want enough hair to go just to the end of the hook. So I'm going to pinch it and see how much I need. I've got a pretty good idea. Transfer my right hand to the left hand. I'm going to pinch this down, and just for purposes of making things a little bit easier, I'm going to clip a little bit off so that it doesn't get all messed up in the whole deal. But I'm heading for this point right behind the eye of the hook, and I'm going to mash this down against there, holding on to it tightly, wrap my thread around it once, lightly. Make it a little bit tighter, and a little tighter, and a little tighter, and a little tighter. and watch what happens when I take my fingers off the hook. See how that comes up there, how nice it flares up? Okay. Now that wanted to turn a little bit, so I'm going to put a couple more wraps on it, and then I'm going to grab a hold of all this hair and go forward and wrap my thread around the hook. And then I'm going to put a half hitch on this because if I use the whip finish that Steve used to tie his hook, I'm going to get it probably wrapped up in this hair. I find this easier. This is a different way of putting it on. And so the fly is almost finished. Got one thing else to do, and that's grab all this hair, bring it up, clip it off, and there we have the caddisfly. And I'm going to take a little of this, clip a little of these feather barbels off the bottom so it don't impede the fish coming up and grabbing hold of the hook. And I want to dress this up a little bit, so I'm going to clip a little hair off here because a couple of them got. And there we are. That's the caddisfly. Today I'm going to tie the woolly booger, and as I might remember, the hook that I had in the caddisfly was a shorter hook than this hook. This is actually a 3X hook. It's got a much longer shank to it. And I've cheated a little bit here. I put this bead on beforehand and I glued it in place.
Sometimes those beads
because beads want to slide all over the place, and so and they're very hard to hold on to, and sometimes they end up on the floor and all over the place. So I prepared that ahead of time. But I'm going to use a green thread with this, and here again we have to go through the process of putting our thread base on the hook, and I'm going to go clear back to the bend of the hook. Some people will not make a close wrap like this. They want to save some thread, but I think it works better if you do it this way. Well, I forgot to do one thing, and that was put the lead on the hook, so we can handle that without any problem. One thing about tying flies is you can always improvise. So I'm going to put the lead on the hook now.
And you're adding the lead for extra weight to take it deeper into the stream or deeper into the pond that you're fishing.
That's right. It's made actually a little weight.
And the bead serves both as a head and as extra weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's different weights of different types of beads. You can have plastic beads. You can have glass beads. You can have tungsten beads. You can have silver, gold-plated. There are just a myriad of beads. It's what you like, or I should say, it's what the fish likes.
So I want to wrap that on there so it stays secure. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the marabou on, which is going to simulate the tail of the fly, and that's this feather right here. And what I'm going to, I'd have to stroke the fibers, this feather, way back, because all I'm interested in is in just this fluffy part. And I want it to be about as long as the shank of the hook. And from experience, now some people will put this on and then they'll wrap it around the fly like that, and that works okay, but that's not what we're going to do today, because I'm going to do it a little bit different than that. And I do this, Steve, because if I don't, I'm going to get this stuff all over the place.
It's light. It does float a lot of places.
Remember, I've pinched this so that I've got a hold of it, and I don't let go of it. You let go of it, you're back to square one. Then I'm going to tie this in place. Come on. And I don't need all this extra, so I can cut it off. One thing about this, you can be a little bit messy with it because it's not a perfection fly as far as cleanliness. I'm going to add something else to this fly, and that's some of this flashaboo, which has a, well, I guess we call it iridescence to it.
Yes.
See if I can do this better this time, which acts as an attractor
I tie it on in the reverse order in which you're going to use
to the fish.
So the first thing you're going to palmer forward, you tie in last. And the last thing you tie,
And it can be kind of nasty stuff to work with because it just wants to go every which way but what, and it's hard to see also. So we're going to wrap part of it in place there. And having trouble seeing it. Come on. Whenever we're demoing something like this, it wants to go.
yeah, when you're doing it, you're doing it for camera, it's sometimes hard to get it done the way you'd like. That's the reason I picked the easy fly to tie.
All right. I think we're good enough. All right.
Looks good.
Now, next thing we're going to apply is the chenille. And I get the tip of this. I want to get the fluffy stuff off and get down to the little white thread that's in the middle of it to tie it in place. There we got that in place. And I've pre-selected a feather. And I want the barbules of this feather, which is a secondary, that's the little thing that stick out here. I want those to be about as long as the width of the hook, and I have to go up here and find probably about the right place. And we're going to dress this feather so that it matches up to what we want. So I take the feather, and if I cut these off, I can get a better hold on the feather when I'm wrapping it, and it doesn't come off. See, I can just pull on it now. Oh. No, I pulled too hard. I didn't wrap it enough, but anyhow, that secures that feather in position.
You prefer that to stripping the barbules off?
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got the feather in place, the chenille in place, and I'm going to move my thread clear to the front. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start wrapping the chenille toward the front. Make one wrap behind the feather, behind the feather, and we go forward with it. And I do have this device here that I can put my thread over so that I'm not fighting with that all the time. It gives me a little more room with my big hands. And that's about far enough, so I'm going to go over the chenille with my bobbin and thread and wrap that in place. And I'm done with that. And the next one is to take my feather and start palmering it up to the front. And I find that sometimes I jerk on the feather a little bit this way, I can control it better. And we do the same thing with the feather. Kind of work it up the shank of the hook, and you see I lost tension on the feather, and it started to slip backward because they don't forgive you. You just have to keep messing with them and keep that tension. Wrap that in 2 or 3 times. Make sure that feather is secure at this point. And I'll use the whip finisher. There. And there we have the finished woolly booger.
Finished woolly booger?
There's a woolly booger, and here's one that I tied beforehand that's done a little bit more neat. It is a little more neat.
They both catch fish.
See how the fleischabout shows up in that one? So.
One of the things about the person that developed the woolly booger in 1967, I think, sticks in my mind, Russell Blessing. He said it was too effective a fly. It gave the fishermen too much of an advantage.
Yes.
Dick, why don't you explain some of the tools that we use in fly tying, from the very basic bobbin to possibly some of the more elaborate.
Well, you can cut. You'll help me to cover this. But,
all right.
Of course, first of all, we have different colors of thread, different gauges of thread, that sort of thing, and I think there's many different colors that people use for different color of flies. So you can get as complicated as you want to with
Yep.
this. So this is called a bobbin. Holds a thread, and ladies know all about those things. But this holds a thread, and you have to fit through the thread down through this tube, and it comes out in the end, and you pull on it. So that's what we use to wrap on the hook. This tool right here is a whip finisher, and that's what you saw me tie the end of the, when I ended tying the fly, I tied a whip finish knot with that. This can simulate a ballpoint pen, because a ballpoint pen will work just as well, but you can use this tool for wrapping thread around to make a half hitch on the end of the when you finish a fly.
Yeah.
These are forceps, nice to get a hold of hooks if you're trying to get a hook out of a nest of hooks like this right here, because they come in nests and you can reach down and get a hold of them, but they always want to, seems like more than one wants to grab a hold of, especially if you have a little magnetism to your forceps. These are called hackle pliers. There's different kinds of hackle pliers, but this you can attach to the feather to wrap it around the shank of the hook. I didn't use it. I just relied on my fingers to hold on to it. This is another instrument that's used for tying bigger flies to put a whip finish on. Yeah.
Yep.
I've had 2 different sizes here. This is a, what do we call this?
I call it a pointed stick.
I forget the name of it.
You use it for putting glues on and maybe clearing the eye. If you get too much glue on, you clear the eye.
I'm sorry, I lost it. Of course, always need a good pair of scissors, and scissors are very important in this whole thing. They have to be very good scissors in order to cut some of the fine hair and fibers that we use and so forth. And you saw me cut the lead with these scissors. That wasn't a good thing to do, but I have another pair of little, it's almost like fingernail clippers. It's a cuticle clipper is what it is, yes, and that works great for cutting lead off.
You start to doll up the edges, and they particularly inexpensive scissors. Yeah. If you start to doll up the edges, you downgrade them to cutting up the lead wire or the copper wire you're using.
Yeah, this is actually a cat comb, but you need that to get the underfur out of the deer hair and elk hair and that sort of thing. They actually make a bone comb that Chris Helms used for his tying deer hair flies. And by the way,
show them some of your deer hair flies.
These are some deer hair flies that I have tied, and it takes a couple hours to make these. If you want to get a close-up of this, Dave, you can look at this little guy.
Smallmouth and largemouth bass love mice. Pike love mice too. Pike and
This is a pike fly. Supposed to be another type of mouse.
mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I did bring an example of some of the flies we tie in our club. Now, Steve, you want to show them how we learned all this information?
Oh, yes, yes.
To show that it actually isn't as complicated as this if you know how to read.
Yes. Well, it's in addition to in person. You've got one of the things we give new members is a fly tire booklet, and it explains some of the simpler techniques and some of the simpler flies that we tie. It gets you a leg up. This book I got in Cincinnati from the author of the book on the 50 essential flies you should have in your fly box. And this is the actual tie that he made for us. So I think, I didn't get far. Yep, there we go. It's actually over here. It is a caddis bead-headed caddis nymph. Now I think mine was better than his is, but I didn't write a book, so I guess that's a difference. Last, but there are a couple books. This is a book by two noted fly tyers. You pick out the fly you wish to tie. It goes over the techniques and the materials you'd use. It references top and bottom. You work with them together. So
wait a minute, show them how this works. If you have a particular fly you're tying, the instructions are on the top, and it may have highlighted something, and it refers you to a bottom page, which goes into a specific way of tying a feather on or tying hair on, this sort of thing. So
yeah, it's very helpful, very helpful, very helpful. And really a go-to resource when I'm tying at home, and you tie at home too. Now this is by the same authors. I bought this a used copy. I think I paid $90 for it. But it has a myriad. It goes through all kinds of methods. When you tie a parachute fly, which has material sticking straight up from the shank, there are probably 12 methods identified on how to tie that and how to tie the hackle material in. So it's a little bit more difficult to use, but it is very helpful. Now, those are all the books that are available. Those are just a few of the books available. There are also videos available. There's information on YouTube. Mm-hmm. One of the things we've found, and I have found since I've started tying flies several years ago, is when you're sitting there with someone like yourself, Dick, that what you think they said in the video or what you think you read is not quite the way it is.
Hands-on is a lot.
Hands-on is a lot, and having someone there saying, no, you want to move this forward a little bit or back a little bit to get your proportions, or you want to move the material. Use this material because it's a little stiffer, or this type of dubbing because it will trap air, or this type of deer hair. Makes a big, big difference in the quality of the fly.
Yeah.
Because it is, although utilitarian, you're using the fly to catch fish, there's still an art to it.
Mm-hmm. There definitely is. The more involved you get with it, the more you explore things, and the better you become at it. The first fly you tie is not as good as if you tie the same fly. The 10th fly you tie is going to even be better than it was.
None of that.
I want to give our club a little plug here, and the fact that a lot of people are looking for something different to do, mm-hmm. and there's a lot of camaraderie that we have in our club. The people just enjoy coming and visiting. Some don't even tie, they just come to visit and to observe.
yes.
So that's
They
good
all-
also.
Yes, they talk about fly tying, they talk about fishing, they talk about everything.
And they all lie.
Well, we're fishermen. That's one of the rules of being a fisherman. Going back a step, one of the most important tools I found early on was a pocket knife, so I could cut the material off the hook. Because initially you buy your hooks and they can be a little on the steep side. You get 25 in a package and it costs you $8 or $9 for them. And I'm frugal.
Well, the higher quality hooks are expensive.
Are
but
expensive.
These hooks that I had in this, I think 100 hooks cost like $7.
Yeah, you
So-
can use less expensive hooks.
Yeah, so-
And you can use, and the materials you use too. You
Yeah.
can vary the type of materials you use. And
Well,
you can use-
some people use roadkill.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. But you'll see people down skinning animals out for the hides and for the hair, and birds, so they'll stop and grab the feathers and stuff. My cousin, I guess it's my second cousin, raises pheasants out in Iowa. And then he hunts them in the fall, and then he'll send me the pheasant tails from them, which is a very kind of
A very popular fly is a pheasant-tailed nymph.
pheasant tail nymph.
I think we've kind of exhausted our information here this morning.
Well, I think we've used up everything I know.
Thank you. Been fun visiting.
Yes, it was. Yes, and again, come visit us at Fly Tires. Come visit us to tie flies. Come visit us and learn how to fly fish.
And I would say the Heritage Hall has been very grateful, generous in letting us use their facility. We have some members that do not meet the age qualification for being in Heritage Hall, which I think is 60 years. Is that right,
Well,
Dave?
Yeah. We don't card them, but they can come in, but they don't get credit for them as far as
Yes.
senior
Yeah,
citizens.
so.
Well, this is our fly tying demonstration for today. We encourage you to come and join Fly Tires just for the evening to learn how to tie, and maybe go with us out to Fackler's Pond to learn how to fly fish itself. Probably most people have seen the movie A River Runs Through It directed by Robert Redford. And the big star in it was I've forgotten his name, but that would be the role that you play, the excellent fisherman,
No, I don't think so.
handsome fellow.
I don't think so.
But anyway, you see, and they demonstrate casting. There's a gentleman they actually hired to step in. Brad Pitt is the name I was looking for.
Okay,
Brad
yeah.
Pitt, to play Brad's Pitt part, and people see the beauty, the artistry of that casting and launching the fly out there, and the fly that he's tied and caught.
I think most people would realize that was an extreme, though.
Yes, that's.
Most of us don't dive into the pond.
No, most of us don't dive in and float down the river chasing that trout. But anyway, I want to thank you, and again, we invite you to attend Fly Tires.